Hello, and welcome to the DoneJS Contributors Meeting. Today is Friday, February 2nd, 2018. My name is Chasen Lahara, coming to you from Long Beach, California. And today we've got a few people joining us. You guys want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, I'm John, coming to you from Chicago, Illinois. Happy to be here.
Good to see you.
Hey, I'm Kevin from Downers Grove, Illinois, and this week I found out how expensive cat dentists are.
I didn't even think of that as a thing. That sounds like a
very, very expensive.
Hey there, I'm Manuel. I'm joining from Denver, Colorado.
Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Sheriff from Algiers in Algeria. Happy to be here.
Good to see you, Sheriff. So today we're going to talk about the results from our most recent survey, and then we're going to give some demos of what we've been working on over the last couple of weeks. And if there's any topics to discuss after that, we'll go to those. So I'm going to get us started with the survey results. Let me share my screen. So these are the results from the, let me bump this up. These are the results from the multiple choice questionnaire that we had on the survey. We did something a little bit different this time, where we had combined the CanJS, DoneJS, and SteelJS options all into one, because that more accurately reflects kind of our abilities as a team to be able to address things. So here's how things came out. On top was improved error messages and handling. Second to that was tree shaking. Third to that was dev tools, and so on and so forth. All of these were like 1 to 3 votes away from each other. So there wasn't a huge difference going down the line. But this kind of how the ranking came out. So at Batovi, we talked about what we what we have on our plates and what we can prioritize. From our previous epics, we are closing out making CanJS easier to debug in CanJS 4 right now. CanJS 4 has been released. All of the individual packages are out. The main can package was released as well. So we just need to put out a release article next week, and then that'll be done. As a team, we want to get DoneJS 2 out the door, because we want the CLI to be able to produce applications that are using our latest and greatest, be using CanJS 4. So we have some individual packages to update to make sure that the done packages play well with the can packages. And then we want to update the CLI so that it's producing CanJS 4 applications. So this is something that we need to do. And then after that, from previous surveys, we still plan on creating a working with forms guide and creating a routing guide. So we're going into these next 6 weeks with some work already on our plate. So given that, and given the resources that we have, we're definitely going to take the improve error messages and handling issue, and we're going to be able to focus on that this epic. And then given our resources, we think that we're more likely to be able to create dev tools for CanJS out the door than to be able to ship tree shaking for Steel. So this is the next one that we're going to tackle after error messages and handling. And then if we have time to get started on anything else, we'd like to get started on tree shaking. And we've talked about getting babel preset env out the door as well. We think this is important, and we only think this would take maybe a week or 2 of time. So if we have some extra resources available, we want to get this shipped. But our big focuses are going to be the things, getting CanJS 4 out the door, or that's just the release article. But getting DoneJS 2 out the door, these guides, and then starting to tackle error messages and handling, and then dev tools. I think that's all I have to say. Do you guys want to talk about any of this or expand on anything that I just said?
Yeah, I think I'll jump in a little bit. I think the
Cool.
biggest thing is to think about this is like we basically will have two kind of parallel tracks going at the same time. So kind of the first half of this epic will be one track will be working on DoneJS 2, and the other track will be working on the forms guide and the routing guide and closing out CanJS 4.0. And then for the second half, we'll have one track that's working on error messages and handling, and the other track that's working on dev tools for CanJS. So that's kind of how our resources work out and how we're planning to work on it, I think. But the biggest thing for me, the most interesting part of this is like people really want us to improve the tools that we have. They want us to fix error messages. They want us to make things easier to debug. And a lot of the things that were really newer features like streaming view models and animations and stuff like that, people weren't as interested in. So I think it's really a sign that people clearly want us to kind of slow down on new features and really stabilize things and make error messages awesome and make debugging a lot easier. And I think that's the feedback that I personally took from the survey results.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in that. And those are really good points. Thank you for kind of explaining in a better way how our resourcing works.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Cool. Anything else?
No, this is awesome. Thanks for everybody who voted. I think it's exciting stuff we're going to work on. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be good to get this stuff shipped in the next 6 weeks. And everyone who gives feedback, it's super valuable to us. I followed up with some people that we had additional questions for because we really value everyone's input. So yeah, thank you. If you took the survey, thanks for filling it out. It means a lot to us. Cool. Let's go into demos. I'm gonna go straight down the line. I don't have anything to demo. These past 2 weeks I've been working on a client project. John, do you have your demo ready? Maybe, John?
Yeah, sorry.
There we go.
Share my screen here.
Cool.
All right. It's out of the way. So this week I worked on our can migrate utility. So it still has a couple little issues that I'm working out, but basically this is, we added kind of a version flag to it and added a bunch of code mods for going from CanJS version 3 to CanJS version 4. So basically what you can do, normally you would globally install this and just use a can migrate like so, and then put in your all of your information there for your project files that you want to transform and all that stuff. But I'm going to be using a local copy since I'm still working on it. Actually, I'll just go up and explain what we've done. So basically that first command there is just pointing it to my local version of can migrate, which you would normally be using a global install of it. This next one is just a default generated DoneJS project, and we're just telling it to look at all the files and source. And what we added was now this version flag where you can say, out a little bit, where you can say can version 3 to go from version 2 to 3. It'll run all the proper transforms for that. Or you can say can version 4, and it will run all the proper transforms from going from version 3 to 4. You can still run transforms individually by using the -- transform flag. So if you want to run an individual one or a couple specific ones, you can do that. But this version flag simply, like I said, we're still getting a couple errors, but will allow you to go from version 3 to version 4 or get you most of the way there anyway. That's it for me.
Cool. Can you actually show like what the code mods do? I know that we've started working on some of the 3 to 4 code mods.
Is there a diff that you could show, like before and after those code mods ran?
Yeah, I think. Well, we ran into. I would need to stash all my stuff and go back to the master branch to get rid of this error, I think. But okay. Yeah, I can do that real quick. But so basically, here are the ones that we have worked on so far. So in CanJS version 4, we are no longer using the %event kind of thing. Everything is on scope now. And so we'll go through and look at all of those and actually change that from like %event to scope events, or %element to scope elements. This one, the implicit scope walking we don't have done yet. I don't know why that's checked unless somebody's done it. So functions are now called, wait, these are not right. So functions are no longer called with the, or they have to be called with the parens, otherwise it'll just be the toString value of that function. So we have a code mod that will go through and add the parens to those functions. We no longer have log in our stash files, so we have one that will go through and change it to console log this. This one I believe is done as well, so it's just a changing the syntax of page here. Ready, can route ready is now can route start, so we have a code mod for that. Can route, the default function there is now can route register, so we have a code mod that will change that for you. And you can look at the rest of these; they're pretty self-explanatory. There's several of them.
Cool. Thanks, John. Anyone have any questions for John?
How does the function one work?
Which one? The one that adds parens?
Yeah, how does it know it's a function?
Actually,
Exactly.
yeah, I just refreshed the page. That one's actually not done, sorry. My mistake.
Is
So-
that one we're planning on doing?
We talked about it. I don't know if they're like for the scope walking and the function here, I don't know of a really good way to do that. Because this is in a stash file, so we can't like have the JavaScript AST to like walk through and see if
So
it's a function.
The scope walking one we could do. We could just change everything to scope.
Everything with scope find, yeah.
But I don't know that that's worth it. The function one, we could hit some of the cases, like if
Helpers
you're
that we know.
doing, yeah, or if you're doing on click equals and then something, like that's almost always going to be a function. But yeah, one's like the one that you showed, John. That one would be, there'd be no way for us to know if it's a function or not.
Right.
Now without knowing your define maps and things like that. I would make that one have our helpers in it, and maybe you could provide it a list of other functions. I mean, just in an ideal world, what you would have is a code mod that could ask you questions and then be like, is this a function? You know, do something. And then you would say yes, and then it would all do somethings, and it would also convert. It could, but then it could also just populate the list with our helpers. That might be alone, just changing is EQ each those over would probably be really beneficial, because I would imagine that those are like half of all functions that need to be done.
Okay. Yeah, I can work on that.
Cool. Thanks, John. Justin, do you have anything to show that you or your wife shipped in the past 2 weeks? Any demos for us?
Sure. Yeah, we shipped a release.
Hey.
So yeah, we had a boy 3 days ago. So we're going home today, which is nice. Yeah, thank you. Sorry, what'd you say?
Congratulations.
I just assumed it was congrats. Oh, thank you. So what was I gonna? There's something else I just wanted to say about the code mods, but now I forgot what it was. Yeah, you could use Stash's parsing to be able to do it if you really wanted to get fancy. Stash is a parser. You just match magic tags, then you run it through the other parser, and you could do it that way. But Kevin knows what I'm talking about. Anyways, for those who don't, I will.
Yeah, so basically we could import the stash parser and then just parse the string we get in. a source string?
Yeah, well, really, you have to use two parsers, one to find the magic tags and then another within the magic tags. But yes, that is the idea. You could do that. But I don't know if you get string number or line numbers and it tokenizes it the way you would really want it. Anyways, I don't know if you already talked about this, but CanJS 4.0 is now published. We just haven't done the release article. So for my demo, I worked on this release article. I just want to go through the features and talk about them. I don't know if that's something we want to do at the end.
I think it's okay to go through now. I just briefly mentioned it after when talking about the survey results, but we haven't gotten into it.
All right, sounds good. So CanJS 4 is really a result of the first round of community surveys that we took. So the features that landed are pretty well lined up to what people voted on. So I'm just gonna high level stuff, and then you can read this article that goes into all of the stuff much more depth. The first thing we added was a lot of good, powerful debugging tools. Manuel did a lot of work here. Essentially, you can, given code, it can sometimes be hard to know what changes, like full name here, especially if first and last were derived from other things or passed in from other components, other places. This can log, even from an element that's connected to full name, can log from the element all the way to the source values. And even if those source values are themselves connected to other elements, you can log bidirectional relationships in CanJS. While this is very useful, I think even in the shape it's now, our ultimate plans for this are to get it into, I think, developer tools that will make it far more useful and powerful and easy to understand how your application's behaving. There already is one that graphs it, but we've still got work to make it super user-friendly. The next thing, the big reason why there was a 4.0 is because we made changes to introduce a more robust queuing system in CanJS. That queuing system also improves understandability of your application because it sorry, I had to moved because I was in the way of a picture. It improves your understandability of your application because, like, let's say you just had some code. I had this person, I had full name, and I had a debugger when full name changes. It can kind of be hard to know, like, what is the root cause just by looking at this old 2.3 or 3.0 stack trace. This is what you would see. That's not very understandable. Now you can call CanQ's log stack, and it will give you a much more easily understood stack trace, if you will. Define map. A define map's first change to Lincoln from Annie. That caused a full name observation to change, was notified that one of its dependencies have changed, and a full name observation was updated, and that's what called this full name function to run. So not only did we make improvements there, we actually improved the actual stack trace as well. A lot of places in CanJS's code, we've actually labeled the functions so that they will appear nicer, essentially. So you could see someone set define map first. So this give a lot more clarity for your application. Next thing is we just made component setup a lot easier. If you wanted to do a pure JavaScript hello world, now all you really need is component because we made stash the default view. We also made define map the default view model. So now you can just create an element or define a component and create an element for it and add it to the page, and it will get auto-mounted. Just very similar to how custom elements work. In a real-world application, typically you don't even need to do this, appending the hello world element, because your application, your HTML would typically have that, and this is where your CanJS application would go. And this is, I'm actually in some ways really excited about this because if you're working in kind of a non single page application setup where you've just got, hey, you want a slider on the page and you've got this widget and this widget, you've got something more like a static site generator, then now CanJS is really useful for that because you can just add widgets to the page and they will become live when CanJS boots up. CanRoute, a little bit easier to set up because components can be auto-mounted. You just find your MyApp element, set CanRoute's data to that, and that will connect to its internal view model and set up the cross-directional routing. Something that Kevin spent a ton of time on was this simplifying our stash templates to just remove a whole lot of weirdness and just like ambiguity of what you should do when and special syntax that means things. The most important one, I think, is really we made it so you have to use parentheses to call functions. So this removes all of this weird @ stuff to pass a function. Instead, now you can just pass functions. That's because if you want to call a function, well, you have to put parentheses. We also moved a lot of the special syntax into using scope. So if you want the event for a click handler, well, you just do scope.event. And scope is kind of like your arguments object or array-like thing in a function in JavaScript. Scope is our version of that, and there's kind of special properties tacked onto it where you can do things. So like look up the index when you're looping through items. You create variables local to this scope. Scope walking is removed. I think we kind of already talked about that. It was always confusing to people why this template that tried to print out the age and a name of a child would write Joffrey is 33 years old because it would walk up to the parent context. That's removed. It's none of that anymore. I think it's a really good thing. We have, so this is probably going to be a much bigger deal in CanJS 5.0, but people can start using it and playing with it right now. We have a proxy-based observable objects that are, the goal is to eventually replace DefineMap with these. I assume we'll still support DefineMap just like we still support CanMap in 4.0 for a very long time, probably forever. But this is essentially you can create observable objects and then you can add properties willy-nilly to them. And you can also extend observe object like you would extend, use class syntax to extend. And I have to go because someone else has to finish this. I have baby stuff to deal with.
Sounds good. Good to see you.
All right, bye.
Thanks, Justin.
Bye.
Kevin, do you want to take over from there?
Yeah. Just gotta find where that is. Yeah, he sent it to me. Awesome.
Really need a soundboard to be able to play Jeopardy music. I gotta get on that.
Sorry.
No,
all right.
you're good.
He was about here. Yeah, so the last thing that this talks about is the way that we kind of improved our code and make it easier for you to improve your code, which is kind of a catch-all for some other things that were done. The next thing it talks about is the streaming property definitions, which is the new value behavior on define maps. So this is basically a way to remove all setters from your code by, instead of using setters, using this value definition. So in previous versions of CanJS, we've shown this city-state example before, but basically what you want is if you've got two drop-downs, one for city and one for state, when the state changes, you want the city to be reset. So previously what you would have to do is put a setter on state, and when state gets set, then set city to null. But the problem with that is that then your definition or your places where city changes increases. You're changing city in a bunch of different places throughout your code. So what you can do now in 4.0 is use this value behavior. So the definition of city is completely within city's definition, which is awesome. And you can do that by using this listen to state, and then resolving with the null value to reset city when state changes. So this is kind of a halfway between the object-oriented kind of getter-setter approach that we've had in the past, and then something that's closer to like RxJS streams or Kepler event streams or whatever, which is a lot more complicated and a lot harder to learn, but can do a lot of this stuff also.
And hey, Kevin.
Yeah.
So what was value is now changed to default, correct?
Yes, you can still use value the way you were before. So if you have like value and then a string, it's still going to use that, but it's going to warn you and say you should use default now instead of value. So using value the way we used to use value is deprecated, but it will still work in 4.0. This isn't a huge breaking change because you'd have to change that everywhere in your code.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, default is the new keyword that is a way to set a primitive default value. All right, and then the next section talks a lot about queues. I haven't read this in a while, so I'm not going to try to go through it, but it basically, Justin kind of talked about queues already. It's cleaning up a lot of bugs that we have had in previous versions of Stash, because it was hard to predict exactly what order things would happen in, or it was hard to, in our code, in the canned Stash code, to make things happen in the correct order. So queues cleans up a lot of that, but it also makes it so that you can get really good performance if you're using queues correctly. So here, let me show this. So we have this thrashing way that, click this update thrashing. You can see when I click it, it takes half a second to update, and then the queued version is 1/100th of that, which without seeing any code doesn't make any sense. But we'll have I think Justin's going to have a longer example or a dedicated blog post just about that. Wow, this demo is huge. Yeah, the last thing is talking about upgradability. So this is what John kind of already talked about. We're going to have a migration guide and code mods to help you get your app 90% of the way upgraded. You shouldn't have to do very much. And then we just kind of talk about what's next, which Jason talked about a little bit already. We're going to work on dev tools, things that we've wanted to update for a while, can set and can connect. We're still going to get to those. And then some guides that we've proposed and are going to start working on. And then, yeah, whatever is voted for in the next service. So that's it. That's a preview of this post, which should be out early next week, talking all about CanJS 4.0. With that, I'll just go into my demo because it's the same thing. So I was going to demo, so CanJS 4.0, like a couple of people have mentioned, CanJS 4.0 is out. So now if you go to canjs.com, you'll actually get this version for CanJS 4.0.1, which I released this morning. You'll see these pretty new pictures with color in them. If you need to get to the old docs, those are still available. Eventually, those will be at p3.canjs.com. I'm waiting for the DNS update. So right now, they're being hosted at this GitHub Pages website that's linked to up here. So you can find that in the dropdown if you want to go back to the older docs. So yeah, 4.0 is out. 4.0.1 is out. The reason there's a 4.0.1 is if we run the 4.0.0 code, you'll see that nothing happens because it is broken. Can is not defined, which is not a good sign for the CanJS package. So that one's been deprecated already in the first 12 hours. 4.0.1 is the one you want to use if you're using the global build. Internally, they're exactly the same. So if you're using the split out packages, nothing is broken for you. That's it for me.
Sweet. Thanks, Kevin. Anyone have any questions before we move on? Nope. Cool. Manuel, do you have something to demo for us?
Yes, I have. Let me share my screen. So What I've been working on the last couple of weeks, there is the optimized build of SteelJS, and if you are not familiar with it, you can visit in the steeljs.com page. There is an entry for the optimized builds. And in a few words, this is just an attempt to ship code with a smaller shim instead of the full SteelJS loader, which is very powerful. It has many features, but if you strip some of those features and only use the ones that you actually need in your app, you'll have less code to load, and that's all good. So what I've been doing is setting up the optimized build for the bitballs, and bitballs is one of the examples app that we have, and you can go to .js.com/bitballs to check out the guide. And here you can see the high-level architecture of the application and how the data is structured and all that stuff. So while I was working on this, I found a problem with the Slim Loader, and it's related to a feature of Steel Tools called share bundles. So I'm not going to go into the depth of what share bundles are or how they are computed, but the gist of it is that when Steel Tools is creating a build, it sees what are the most share modules between bundles, and what it does is create specific bundles for those most share modules. And I have an example app right now. You can see in my editor, and it's really simple. I just have like a couple of modules, and what they do is just import shared dependencies. In this case, we have a dependency called dependency AB, which is imported by the app A and both AB. So what I'm trying to do with this is to force Steel Tools to create a share bundle for these two. And if I show you the distribution folder, which is the one that Steel Tools grabs, you can see that we have a main.js bundle, which is the index, the entry point of your application. Then we have bundles for both app A and app B. And then we have the share bundle, which is includes modules that both app A and app B use. So the thing with this share bundle is that it has to be loaded before you can use any of the other bundles. And that was missing from the Slim Loader. I actually have to, there are two pieces of the share bundles theme. There is, when the loader loads, there is a module that is loaded right away, which is the entry point module, the main module. So it's possible that that main module has share bundles that need to be loaded first. So we supported that use case. The one that was missing is that when you are doing progressive loading, which in the Slim Loader is handled by this still required dynamic function, it is possible the bundle you're trying to load at that point needs share bundles to be loaded first. So the way we solve this is that it was a two-piece solution. First, we needed to know what those bundles were and how can we locate them. And that's what these share bundles property is. It basically just map the bundle ID to an array, to a list of share bundles that need to be loaded first. And then the loaded itself, if Steel Tools detects that our share bundles that need to be loaded, it adds this piece of code to the dynamic function. And what it does is just to check that object that I showed you before. And if there are share bundles to be loaded, it just goes through and load each of them. And when those share bundles are loaded, it loads the bundle that you're actually trying to load. In this case, it will be, it first load this one, app A and B, and then it proceeds to load app A. And I'm going to show you in the browser how that looks like, actually. And what I have now is the example app that I showed you before, loading the production files. And when I reload this, we hit the still required dynamic function. And that's because if we go back to main.js, you'll see that I'm dynamically importing this module. And if we go back to my browser, you can see that actually that's the same module ID that I showed you before. And what the still require dynamic function first does is just to try to convert that module ID to a numeric module ID, which is the ones that the Slim loader uses. Now step over these steps, and then here you can see that it actually finds a shared bundle that needs to be loaded, which is the ID 12. And I'm going to put a breakpoint in here, and first let's check the HTML page. And I want you to see the head element because right now it only has like the title and a couple of other tags. So what's going to happen once I let this code execute at this point is that the loader first went ahead and loaded the share bundle and then loaded the bundle that actually contains the module that we're trying to load. We go back to the HTML page, we see that we have two script tags now. One is for the share bundle, and the other one is for the bundle containing the module that we want. And if I finally just continue executing the code, and we go to the console, we actually check that the global variable that my code is setting in the main, the app A, is actually set after the share bundles were loaded. And that's pretty much it. If you have questions.
That's awesome. Thanks, Manuel. Anyone have questions? Nope. Cool. Justin, good to see you again. Sheriff, did you have anything that you wanted to demo?
No. I know I was busy this last time, so I would try hard to be present for DoneJS version 2 to help you guys get it out.
Sweet. We appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I think that's it for demos then. Does anyone have any topics that they wanted to discuss before we go? Nope. Cool. I think that's it then. Everyone who's watching on YouTube, either the live stream or the video afterwards, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. See you then.
Bye.